Hello and welcome to the Red Zone podcast. We're talking about tight ends here. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life, and you and I are on the same page here with tight ends. We were talking a little bit before the show about the elite options, the other guys. Seems like a lot of guys stand out, and then everyone else is just kind of mediocre based on price, based on matchup, things like that. So we'll start things off with the obvious play, probably one that you've already noticed yourself. Greg Olson. Sitting at $5,300 on DraftKings, $59 on FanDuel. Obviously, Kelvin Benjamin now out for the season. This isn't a potent passing attack, but Greg Olson's a guy who he had over 1,000 yards last year, 6 touchdowns, and he also is just the focal point of this offense, even with Kelvin Benjamin. So you just got to imagine takes on an increased role. And you and I are in agreement that if you're not playing Gronk in your Thursday contest, the Sunday tight end has got to be Greg Olson.
Yeah, I mean, in the Week 3 preseason game, he had 8 first-half targets. I don't see a way he doesn't get the double-digit targets in Week 1 and probably almost every game throughout the season. I mean, until Devin Funchess comes around and can contribute in a starters-type role, I mean, he's their biggest red zone target, too. I mean, they're running out Ted Ginn and Corey Brown, who are both tiny wide receiver, deep threat type guys on a good wide receiver team at best. I mean, those guys might not even make some of these wide receiver rosters for other teams around the league. So, I mean, I think Olson has a bigger red zone role. I could see 10 touchdowns this year, 1,200 yards, 85, 90 catches. I mean, there's a ton to like here. It's a pretty good matchup, too. Just overall, I mean, it's really hard to argue with him at a price that is going to go way up for Week 2, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, he's the security blanket for Cam Newton, even when you do have other weapons there. So, a lot of good things going for Greg Olson. So, he's your chalk play, obviously, if you're playing Sunday, Monday only contests. Next up, we got Martellus Bennett for the Chicago Bears. Obviously, Brandon Marshall out of town, so there's some targets to be had there. We got Alshon Jeffrey. Looks like he's finally on the good side of questionable, but we don't know if he's going to be 100% or not. Then you got Eddie Royal, who's the next option. He's also questionable. Of course, you got Matt Forte, but Matt Forte didn't produce much on the ground last year, so obviously he's part of the passing game as well. But Bennett was one of the more heavily targeted guys last year, and especially on DraftKings at his price at his $4,300. I think that he's a great option because this is a team that's going to be spreading the ball around. There's going to be plenty of options, especially when you consider that they're one of the biggest underdogs on the week. So they're going to be behind and throwing the ball a lot.
Yeah, right. And Bennett had a great game against the Packers. I want to say it was his best game of the season last year. In the second game, they played with 9 catches for 134 yards. The Packers blitz a ton from the linebacker spots in their 3-4 defense, which is going to leave Bennett unattended at times in the middle of the field. I mean, he's not going to be a massive, deep threat or run after the catch guy, but he's a big red zone threat. With Brandon Marshall gone, that's 10, 12 targets a game that the Bears are replacing. Maybe Eddie Royal picks up all of those. Maybe Alshon picks up some, but Bennett's getting some kind of bump from that. I mean, that was Cutler's favorite target, and he's totally out of the picture now. I mean, like you said, at DraftKings at $4,300, that is a really tough price to pass up.
Yeah, and especially when you factor in the red zone targets, because Jeffrey was a target, but not nearly as much as Bennett and Brandon Marshall were. So, I mean, you got to think that he's going to be the go-to guy in the red zone now due to his size and his strength. So, I think he's an awesome play this week. Next up, Delanie Walker, the value special. And, I mean, this is another guy that we saw have some huge games last year. Ended up over 100 yards a couple times, and he's really cheap on both sides. And, of course, this is a Tennessee offense that overall is a bad offense. But the good thing for Delanie Walker, you got a rookie quarterback coming in, a Marcus Mariota, that is going to be looking for the safe options. He's not a guy that takes a lot of chances down the field. So Delanie Walker, a guy that picks up a ton of first downs, that gets a high volume of catches. You got to imagine that these two are going to build some chemistry early because Delanie Walker, one of the more reliable tight ends in the game.
Yeah, they're also facing a Tampa 2 defense Week 1 against Lovie Smith, who, I mean, the Bears got torched by tight ends basically the entire time Smith was with the Bears. It's because of the way that defense is set up. It leaves the middle of the field wide open. You can have tight ends just sit down in there. That's not always Delanie Walker's game. He's more of a GPP value play to me, I think, although at his price on DraftKings specifically, I mean, he's a great play in basically any format. He doesn't need much to provide value there. But he has a ton of upside, whereas the next guy I have here in value plays, Larry Donnell, is, I think, a really solid cash game play this week. Great bet for a touchdown. Had a really strong season last year early on, especially before Odell Beckham Jr. got back. And, I mean, there's just a ton to like here. With Victor Cruz out, that's a possession receiver in the middle of the field that won't be taking away targets from him. And, I mean, outside of Beckham, Ruben Randall is kind of unproven still. I mean, there's just a lot to like there. In terms of Donald, I think he probably racks up 7-8 targets, a couple red zone targets. He's not going to give you a massive 135-yard, 2-touchdown game, but he's a really strong cash game play, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him build a big-time rapport with Eli Manning last year as well, so this is a guy that he's going to be relying on as his, once again, a security blanket, which is a lot of these good possession-type tight ends are. So yep. I definitely think that he's got a really high floor. I mean, maybe not a guy with a huge ceiling, but at that price, you don't really need that. You're just looking for some stability. And then next up, the guy that all DFS players love to love, and Andy Reid, Chiefs, everyone else loves to hate because they just don't get him involved nearly as much as he should. Travis Kelce for the Chiefs. He's expensive on both sides, but when you factor in his potential, his size, his speed, his athleticism, I mean, he's not quite Gronk, but he's pretty damn close and when you consider all these factors. So if they can find a bigger role in the offense for him this year, which they should be able to because the passing game should be opened up with Jeremy Maclin in town now.
Yep.
Travis Kelce, an elite red zone target and a guy that can just, I mean, he can do it all. He's got size, speed, and you got to love that. And people might be scared away from the price based on his production last year, but this is a guy that's got monster upside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his biggest concern last year was they weren't playing him a large percentage of the plays. It sure looks like he's going to play close to 100% of the plays this year, or as close as you can get in the NFL these days. I mean, it's really hard to argue with his upside. Like you said, he's a little bit overpriced just because of how underpriced some of these other guys are on both sites. But, I mean, $6,000 on FanDuel, $4,800 on DraftKings is not going to scare you away, especially in GPPs where, I mean, with guys like Devontae Adams and maybe even Benny Cunningham and some of these other really cheap guys on both sites, I mean, you're going to have money to spend, and spending a couple extra dollars to get Kelce over like Martellus Bennett for some upside or something like that in a GPP is really easy to do.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. And then last up, we got our GPP special, Vernon Davis from the San Francisco 49ers. This is a guy that, I mean, we've seen scouts, guys in the NFL in the past couple seasons say that he's the absolute best athlete in the NFL. I mean, he's one of the best athletes, depending on anyone you ask, really. But he's a guy that it wasn't really his problem, I didn't think. His fault that he didn't have success last year. Colin Kaepernick just wasn't accurate. He wasn't moving around well in the pocket. He wasn't consistent. So if Kaepernick can get back to stop trying to be a hero, stop trying to make plays with his feet, stay in the pocket and make throws. I mean, Vernon Davis, he's a deep threat. He's a possession guy. I mean, he can do it all. It's just really in the hands of Kaepernick here.
Yeah, and they lost two really strong possession guys that Kaepernick used a lot last year in Crabtree and Stevie Johnson. Yep. Neither one of them had huge seasons, but they were guys that caught a ton of underneath passes, and then they replaced them with Torrey Smith, who's the exact opposite of that. So, I mean, you could be looking at a big target season for Vernon Davis. He might not be the deep threat he once was, but, I mean, he's still a great athlete, and honestly, we never saw a massive season out of him really as a deep threat. The one really great season he had, he caught a ton of passes and a ton of short touchdowns. So that's more of what we're going to want here. I think the 49ers get back to running the ball a decent amount more, play action type stuff, which benefits Davis. He's just so cheap on both sides. I mean, $3,100 on DraftKings for a guy with his athletic ability and playing with a quarterback that has the kind of arm that Kaepernick has. I mean, there's definitely some upside here. I like the first five guys quite a bit more than Davis. I do like Davis as a GPP play, though.
Yeah, and like we saw in the playoffs a couple of years ago, I mean, he's borderline uncoverable when he's gets it going. Yep. So he's definitely a nice GPP, under the radar type of play. So that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.